Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor was a veteran Navy pilot with over 2,500 hours of flight time. In World War II, he flew off aircraft carriers in the Pacific and performed with distinction. But by December 1945, he was working as a flight instructor in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. On December 5th, his task was to lead a squadron of 5 bombers on a training flight off the east coast of Florida. He and his students were to navigate towards the island of Grand Bahama, drop a few bombs, and then return to base. At 2:10 p.m., they took off and flew out into the Atlantic. Conditions were good. The mission should have been routine. Instead, Taylor and his 14 students would become the subject of an enduring mystery. At 3:40 p.m., another instructor in Fort Lauderdale picked up a strange transmission from one of Taylor's students.
"I don't know where we are. We must have gotten lost after that last turn."
Then Taylor said,
"Both of my compasses are out. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down."
For 2.5 hours, the confusion continued. Taylor and his students had no idea where they were. As the sun went down and the weather began to turn, they became increasingly desperate to find land. At one point, a student began to panic and yelled,
"Damn it, if we could just fly west, we would get home. Head west, damn it."
At 6:20 p.m., Taylor gave an ominous order.
"All planes, close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we will go down together."
That would be his last message. All 5 planes of Flight 19 vanished into the black waters of the Atlantic, never to be recovered. But the story took an even stranger turn when another flight was sent to find them. Flight 19 vanished in what people have come to call the Bermuda Triangle. It's a loosely defined region, covering a triangular area between Bermuda, Florida, and Puerto Rico. The Bermuda Triangle is one of the busiest parts of the Atlantic Ocean. However, it's also been the site of a long list of unexplained disappearances. People have felt there's something strange about this region since the voyages of Christopher Columbus. It was his expedition that gave us our first recorded experience with unexplainable events in the Triangle. According to Columbus's logs, he first entered the Triangle in 1492. He reportedly encountered several strange and troubling issues. Firstly, his compass began to spin and change erratically, causing his small fleet to lose their primary form of navigation. Since his voyage, many independent sources have confirmed that something about this stretch of ocean can cause havoc on navigational tools. We'll have more of an explanation later in the video. But for now, know that when Christopher Columbus entered this then uncharted water, his compasses went wild. He also reported strange lights in the sky. His crew spotted several balls of light streaking around the stormy clouds. This was not ordinary lightning and was certainly something never seen before by anyone on board. Also, according to Columbus's logs, the waters also suddenly became very rough, with whitecaps and deadly rogue waves. His ship then ended up in what is now known as the Sargasso Sea. This is a section of the triangle with a massive buildup of seaweed and algae blooms. It's so thick that many vessels can end up stranded there, with the weeds jamming their rudders and propellers. Columbus had to push through the Sargassum, with many in his crew fearing that they would become permanently entangled in the plants. After Columbus's voyages, the traffic in the Bermuda Triangle increased. With this came more strange encounters, and the first recorded disappearances. In 1800, the USS Pickering was heading from Guadalupe back to Delaware. On board were 91 souls, and they all disappeared, failing to make their scheduled port. The ship and crew were never found. The same is true of both the USS Wasp and the USS Wildcat in 1814 and 1824 respectively. Both had a full crew complement, and both were lost without a trace while sailing through the Bermuda Triangle. At the time, these kinds of disappearances were not out of the norm. Many vessels were lost all over the world while transitioning the oceanways. Seafaring was a very dangerous profession, and sudden storms, rogue waves, and even pirate encounters could lead to many large vessels being sunk with all hands or simply lost. However, the disappearance of one vessel in 1838 still remains a deep mystery. The French vessel Rosalie was traveling from Germany to Cuba. Its hull was loaded with valuable goods such as wine, silks, and fruits. The ship entered the Sargasso Sea and was apparently lost. But that's not the end of the story. In 1840, the Rosalie suddenly reappeared. It was found beached and abandoned. Its hull was still stuffed with all the goods it had when it left port. The furniture on board was still in order, with plates still on tables and the captain's papers still together. The only living thing on board were a few birds and a single cat. The crew seemingly just vanished, having suddenly abandoned ship for no clear reason. It's been speculated that the Rosalie got tangled in the Sargassum and had been stranded. It's possible that the crew abandoned ship in order to get help, but why did they leave valuable supplies like food and water behind? There may be further explanation involving the deadly seaweed, but we'll go over that later in the video. The Rosalie's disappearance and reappearance was the incident that birthed the dark legend of the Bermuda Triangle, but it would be far from the last. Over the next 100 years, from 1840 to 1940, many more ships were lost. The Ellen Austin found a derelict vessel. A small crew was placed on the abandoned vehicle to bring it back to port. When the derelict ship was found again, the new crew was missing as well, vanishing without a trace. In 1918, the USS Cyclops was also lost with all 306 hands aboard. The Cyclops was a military support ship, and at first she was assumed sunk by a German submarine. However, a full investigation failed to find any trace of her. After the First World War, the schooner Carroll A. Deering was lost and then found derelict. Everybody on board was missing. The vessel had run aground near North Carolina. When rescuers finally managed to board the ship, they found the helm and rudder destroyed. The navigational equipment, along with the crew's clothes and food supplies, were absent, as were 2 lifeboats. However, the missing crew were never found. The last recorded incident before the onset of World War II was the disappearance of the SS Cotopaxi. This was a cargo ship first commissioned during the Great War. She had been in service for 7 years before her final voyage in 1925. During this voyage, the ship sent out a radio transmission declaring an emergency. It was listing and taking on water at a fast rate. This was the last time anyone heard from the Cotopaxi, until its wreckage was finally discovered and identified in the 1980s. The Triangle was already spoken of in hushed tones by sailors around the world by the time World War II broke out, but this period would cause its legend to explode. In 1941, the USS Proteus was lost with all hands, possibly the result of its aging hull meeting the rough waters of the passage. Back to Flight 19 and its mysterious disappearance in 1945. After these series of desperate and panicked radio transmissions, things were taking an ominous and deadly turn. In a desperate rescue attempt, the US military quickly dispatched a large PBM aircraft to intercept the flight and guide them back to safety. However, the PBM quickly lost contact with air control and itself went missing, never to be recovered. A merchant ship in the area later reported seeing a fireball in the sky before they passed through a large oil slick. This was in the same area that the PBM had been tracked. Both it and the 5 aircraft were missing, all lost in the same event. The Navy ended up launching a far larger search and rescue effort the next day. When they failed to find any survivors, a massive investigation was started. It later reported several things that could have led to the tragedy. One of them was all too familiar. Before they lost contact, the flight reported that their compasses began to act erratically, causing them to lose navigational instrumentation. It seems that this area of the ocean has this effect on the magnetic systems used to maintain direction. While one of the first aircraft losses over the Triangle, Flight 19 would be far from the last. In the years since, over a dozen aircraft have been lost or destroyed while traveling through this area. The most recent incidents were in 2017. One was a Turkish Airlines Airbus being forced to change course when magnetic and electrical failure suddenly happened over the Triangle. Later that year, a private small aircraft suddenly lost contact with air traffic control. Wreckage was later recovered, with all 4 people on board missing and presumed dead. So what is it about this patch of ocean and its mysterious and deadly reputation? Is it the result of something scientifically unexplainable, something extraterrestrial, or even something supernatural? Several wild theories have been postulated over the decades. Some involve the mythical lost city of Atlantis, or alien abductions, or even interdimensional wormholes. While these various conspiracies are fun to think about and even expand on, the probable truth is both far more mundane and far less fantastical. The common thread between these various encounters and disappearances is the supposed loss of navigational abilities. When ships and planes pass through the triangle, many report that their compasses begin to spin or jitter wildly. Is it because of aliens? Probably not. The actual answer may have to do with the Earth's own magnetic field. The area known as the Bermuda Triangle may sit at a weak point in our magnetosphere. Scientists have theorized that cosmic radiation may be penetrating and interfering with sensitive equipment such as magnetometers or gyroscopes. Digital equipment is especially vulnerable to this interference, which would explain why modern technology hasn't helped much. This might not be the only naturally occurring danger in this area of the ocean. Another involves the thick sargassum, which may explain the mystery of the Rosalie. The thick seaweed can entangle ships. However, the mass of decaying and decomposing seaweed can also expel vast amounts of deadly gas. Methane and CO2 can boil up from underwater, and the crew of the Rosalie could have been psychologically affected. They may have even been driven mad and abandon the vessel without properly preparing for the journey home. These methane blooms also may be the cause of so many lost aircraft, including the rescue PBM sent after Flight 19. The methane can rise in columns into the sky, and when a plane and its hot exhaust pass through it, they could ignite the gas, causing a sudden explosion. This would line up with the merchant ship's report of a fireball in the sky. Finally, there are the waters themselves. The Bermuda Triangle is in the tropics, where sudden and violent storms are common. Florida has a long history of massive hurricanes reaching shore, as does Bermuda and Puerto Rico. These storms can pop up suddenly and dissipate just as quickly. However, for the planes and ships caught in the squalls and upswells, how long they last can be the difference between life and death. These storms and sudden wind changes can also cause rogue waves, which are deadly for a couple of reasons. They happen when wind changes intersect and multiple wave patterns collide. They then travel in the opposite direction of prevailing currents, forming into sharp cliffs. They can collide and send even the most massive ship tumbling end over end, or even split them in two. This is especially true of older vessels like the USS Pickering. And what about Christopher Columbus and his strange lights in the sky? This could be explained by the meteorological phenomenon known as ball lightning. These electrical discharges can travel slowly through the air, and are known to happen around the area the explorer first reported seeing his mysterious lights. So do all these factors, the magnetic anomaly, the deadly storms, and the noxious gases all combine to make the Bermuda Triangle a particularly dangerous patch of water? Frankly, no. The Bermuda Triangle sits between three major ports, and is very high in both sea and air travel. So by the ratio, the loss of said air and seacraft is no larger than any other part of the world. The Bermuda Triangle simply has a few very spooky stories, and some decent marketing that has made it the focus of both the media and conspiracy theorists worldwide. In fact, this isn't just our opinion. In 1991, noted writer and scientist Carl Sagan was asked about this near mythological stretch of ocean. His reply was appropriately blunt, stating, "Statistically, it's a fallacy. Compared with other places in the world as well traveled as that area of the Atlantic, do airplanes and ships go down more? The answer is no. Why is it always planes and ships that get lost? It's because they can sink in water. If we started losing trains, if we had a Duluth Triangle in which trains began disappearing, that would be interesting. So what do you think? Is there a secret wormhole to an alien ghost dimension, or is it all just overstated? Leave a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe for more great videos from History Snob.